Mic check 1 2. Should you sell your physical GameCube games knowing what is in store for the Nintendo Switch Online GameCube game availability? And the reason why I'm saying that is because we do have somewhat of a comprehensive list of games that are going to be made available via the Nintendo Switch Online store or you know site that you can go to through the Switch Online and actually get to these games. And among some of the games that were listed were Fire Emblem Path of Radiance, Pokemon Gale of Darkness, XD. They've also mentioned Mario Sunshine, I believe Luigi's Mansion, F-Zero, Soul Calibur 2. But we're getting some very heavy hitting titles, including Chibi Robo, which might be the most expensive game, if not one of the most expensive games. I would say it's probably up there in the top 5 most expensive GameCube games available. And so this makes someone who is a collector wonder, should they sell their physical GameCube games? And I want to say no right off the bat, primarily because if you're a collector, you collect physical games. You don't collect digital games. You don't collect ROMs. You don't collect emulators. You collect actual physical games. And so whether or not the game releases on a online platform or not, what matters to you is actually having the physical copy that you can put into an actual GameCube system and play at any time. It's not dependent on internet connection. It's not dependent on internet availability. You have full autonomy, so to speak, to play the game. Obviously, unless the game breaks or something like that, then you're a little bit screwed and you have to go get another copy. But for the most part, when you have physical, you have a lot more control. So I think for the collector of physical games, I don't really think that this means a lot. For the gamer, it might be a little bit different. And you got to remember, there's two types of gamers. Well, there's more than two. But for the sake of this conversation, I'm just going to categorize them into two categories, which is your expert gamer and your casual everyday gamer. Expert gamers pay attention to things like frame rates, lag, resolution. They know all the ins and outs of a game. They know the tricks, the secrets, the glitches, all the special stuff. Those are like your expert gamers who really know everything that's going on with a particular game. When I think of an expert gamer, I think about someone like a Steph Curry. And I don't know how many of you follow basketball, but many of you probably know Steph Curry to be one of the greatest shooters, if not the greatest shooter of all time. But there's something else that's very particular about Steph Curry that he doesn't get enough credit for, is it's Steph Curry's handle, right? And Steph Curry is so confident in his handle and knowing how to navigate the court and a basketball that during a warm-up, he was actually dribbling and he mishandled his dribble. And whereas most basketball players might just attribute that to their lack of attention to detail or just their slip up, Steph Curry is so familiar with the ball, the court, and his skills that he immediately knew that the issue wasn't him or his handling skills. He understood that there was actual issue with the court, and there was in fact an issue with the court. There was a dead space on the court where if you dribbled the ball on that part of the court, the ricochet or the bounce back on the ball was not equal to other parts of the court. And that just goes to show his expert level in ball handling and his utmost confidence in his skill and ability. So I use that as an example to say that's what an expert gamer is like. They know everything. They know all the ins and outs. They are keenly aware of any subtle differences and changes in the gameplay of a given game. Whereas you have the casual collector who isn't so aware of certain things about a game. They're not paying attention to frame rates. They don't necessarily even care about resolution. They may not notice if there's a lag. They're not going to know all the ins and outs of a game. They're going to look at everything when it comes to a particular video game and see it on face value. And I think for the gamer's gamer who really relishes playing games in their truest and most natural form, so to speak, in their most original format. I think for those gamers, they're going to want to keep their physical games because no matter how much we do to make access to certain retro games easy, you are always going to have those people who are just so familiar with the original game, the authentic original platform, that playing anything else is just going to feel foreign to them. There are some people who can't produce movements and actions in emulated games than they can on the original console and game just because of something like an input lag. And that could make a big difference in certain action games. It may not necessarily make a huge difference in like a turn-based RPG or, a slower paced game. But when it comes to like an action game that requires precise inputs to execute certain moves and do certain things, like even in the case of like a Soul Calibur, if you grew up playing Soul Calibur and you were able to expertly master and maneuver certain moves, you may find it difficult to do those same moves in a game like or on a platform like the Nintendo Switch Online. It's kind of like when I first got the Marvel vs. Capcom collection. I was so used to doing certain moves and maneuvers on the Dreamcast. I was so used to the timing of the inputs on a Dreamcast that when I started playing it on the GameCube, sorry, not the GameCube, but on the Nintendo Switch, I had to almost become accustomed to the input times for those moves because a game like Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is very precise. You need very specific timing for inputs to do certain air combos, to do certain infinite combos. It's just the way it works. And so I think for gamers, that's where keeping the physical stuff is really going to come into play, and it's going to really matter to them in terms of making sure they're still able to play some of these games in their truest form. But I think casual collectors will thoroughly enjoy it. And at the end of the day, casual gamers are not the ones with these games in their collection. Let's just keep it real. Most casual collectors, or most casual gamers for that matter, probably forgot that these games even existed. Stuff like this really only matters to hardcore collectors or hardcore gamers, and really that's the demographic, that's the audience that's going to have to decide whether or not these games still hold value to them, regardless of what the market says, regardless of if these games plummet in price or value from price charting, which is why I didn't really want to talk about, are you selling for monetary gain? No, I'm saying, does it make sense for you to sell based on the availability of these other games? The monetary value, the pricing in the market, that's all going to sort itself out, right? The market is going to speak for itself. The market will dictate and determine whether or not these games will sustain their current values, whether they'll go down or whether they'll go up. I've heard arguments on both sides of the fence. Some people say they'll plummet. Many people hope that they'll plummet. A lot of people think that because of this new attention that's being brought to these games, these prices might actually shoot up. Either way, you guys let me know what makes the most sense to you from a quality of life standpoint. What will you do? Will you sell your physical copies, create more space so that you can add different games now that you have these GameCube games available online? Or are you remaining true to your physical collections? Let me know what you think down in the comments, and I'll catch you in the next video. It's the Y2K Collector. Take it easy.